I never imagined I'd be telling this story to thousands, maybe even millions of strangers. But what happened to my daughter changed everything. And if there's even one person out there who needs to hear this, then it's worth sharing. My name is Vanessa Carter. I'm 35 years old and I live in Brooklyn, New York. It was a chilly Tuesday afternoon in early spring. I had just wrapped up a major presentation in Washington, D.C., something I had been preparing for over a month. The plan was to stay one more night, maybe decompress a little, but I felt this overwhelming pull in my chest. A need to be home. To see Emily, so I booked the next flight out. I didn't tell anyone. I thought it'd be a fun surprise, especially for Emily. I pictured the moment perfectly, her eyes lighting up, her squeal of, "Mommy!" as she ran to me, arms wide open. But what I walked into, it was nothing like that. When I opened the front door, the house felt unusually quiet. No cartoons in the background, no music, not even the hum of conversation. I called out, "Emily?" No answer. As I stepped into the kitchen, I froze. My 9-year-old daughter was standing on a plastic step stool at the sink, struggling to scrub a mountain of dishes. Her little hands were red and soaked. Her sleeves were wet to the elbows. The counter was cluttered with dirty plates, pans, even pots she probably couldn't lift properly. Her face was blotchy, and I realized she'd been crying, not just a few tears. This was the kind of crying that drains a child. Silent and scared. She didn't see me at first. She was so focused, her eyes narrowed in concentration like she was trying to pass some cruel test. When I said her name, she jumped. A metal spoon clattered into the sink. She turned around slowly, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Mommy?" she whispered, like she wasn't sure I was real. I rushed to her, wrapped her in my arms, and felt how cold and trembling she was. She sagged into me as if she'd been holding herself up for too long. I asked her gently what she was doing, why she was washing dishes all by herself. "I spilled orange juice this morning," she said, barely audible. "Grandma said I had to learn responsibility, so I have to clean everything before they get back." I pulled away just enough to look into her eyes. "Before who gets back?" "Grandma and Grandpa," she said. "They took Harper to Disneyland, but I had to stay. Grandma said I wouldn't appreciate it the way Harper would, because she's their real granddaughter." I felt my stomach turn. My daughter, my sweet Emily, had been left alone, at home, washing dishes, while the rest of the family took her cousin, who was apparently more real, to Disneyland. I didn't even know how to react in that moment. I was angry, yes. But more than that, I was heartbroken. Because no 9-year-old should ever feel like they're less than, like they aren't enough, like they aren't really family. And standing there holding my shaking child, I realized this wasn't just one bad day. This was the result of a pattern I had ignored for too long. That day, I didn't just walk into my kitchen, I walked into the truth, and nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't give birth to her. I didn't carry her for 9 months or witness her first breath. But I was the one who tied her shoelaces for the first time, who stayed up with her through fevers and nightmares, who sat in tiny chairs at school conferences, hoping I was doing it all right. I'm not her biological mother, but I am her mother. No piece of paper or DNA test could make that clearer to me. Her name is Emily. She's my niece. My younger sister Jenna was only 28 when she and her husband died in a tragic car crash on the West Side Highway. Emily was just 2 years old. She survived with barely a scratch, asleep in her car seat. Jenna and David never stood a chance. One moment, a happy family driving home from a Sunday dinner. The next, silence. I got the call just after midnight. I can still hear the way the nurse's voice cracked when she said the words, "You're the only listed next of kin." There were no aunts or uncles left on David's side. Our parents had passed years ago. Suddenly, a child was left behind. Not just any child, Emily. Jenna's daughter, a tiny, curly-haired little girl who had just lost her whole world. And I was 26, single, working full-time in media in Midtown, sharing a walk-up with 2 roommates in Queens. I didn't even have a dog. But somehow, in that moment, I knew there was no choice. Emily wasn't going into foster care. Not on my watch. Taking custody wasn't simple. I had to fight for her. Child Services questioned if I was stable enough, mature enough, responsible enough. I attended every hearing, filled out every form, sat through home visits where they scrutinized my fridge and my furniture and my bank statements. It was the most humbling, exhausting thing I've ever done. But I never wavered, because I knew the stakes. And I knew Jenna would have wanted me to step up. She trusted me with stories, secrets, and now, her child. I'll never forget the first night Emily called me Mommy. It wasn't planned. I didn't correct her. I just froze for a second, then picked her up and held her so tightly. It's a wonder she could breathe. That word unlocked something in me. It wasn't biology. It was something deeper. The willingness to show up, to stay, to protect. Every single day. Over the years, we created our own rhythm. School runs, weekend pancakes, rainy day puzzles, warm baths, silly songs in the car. Every choice I made, every job I took or turned down, every apartment I picked, I thought of her first. I told myself, "You've got this. You're not just surviving anymore. You're raising a child. Your child." I thought the hardest part was behind us. I had built a life for her, around her. I worked long hours, sure, but I made sure she always knew she came first. I never thought there would come a day when someone would try to take that from her, or worse, make her feel like she didn't belong. But that day did come, and when it did, I remembered the promise I made to my sister in the quiet of the night after she died. I will love this child like she's my own, and I will fight for her with everything I've got. Not everyone has the courage to fall in love with a single mom. Most men run when they see the car seat, the half-packed lunchbox, and the bedtime routines. But Daniel Blake, he didn't just fall for me. He fell for my entire little world. Met Daniel Blake on a rainy April afternoon right in the heart of New York City. I had just picked up Emily from her art class and decided to stop by a photography exhibit in Brooklyn. I was tired, emotionally and physically. Being a single mom in the city that never sleeps is exactly as exhausting as it sounds. I was hoping the exhibit might spark some inspiration, or at least offer a quiet moment to breathe. Emily was 4 at the time. She had a mop of curly hair and insisted on carrying her pink paintbrush everywhere, like it was her magic wand. In the middle of the gallery, she plopped down and began sketching one of the portraits, a black and white photo of an old woman grinning with her entire soul, toothless and full of life. I was mortified. Everyone else was politely strolling, wine in hand, murmuring about lighting and contrast. And there was my daughter, sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor with crayons. Then, out of nowhere, a voice said, "You think she's smiling because of cake or because she's holding her grandbaby?" I turned around, ready to apologize. But the man speaking wasn't judging. He was smiling, genuinely. He had kind eyes, a blue raincoat soaked through at the shoulders, and a messenger bag that screamed, "Bookstore employee more than Wall Street." Emily looked up and said very seriously, "Both." He crouched beside her, studying her drawing. "Good answer," he said, then glanced at me. "She's got opinions and talent." That was Daniel. 3 months later, he asked me to dinner. Nothing fancy. Just a cozy pizza joint in the East Village where the tables were too small and the lights too dim. But what mattered to me was what he brought with him, a brand new set of colored pencils for Emily. Didn't want to show up empty-handed. He shrugged. He didn't just talk to me over dinner. He spent most of the night drawing dinosaurs, with Emily on napkins. She giggled for a full hour. Meanwhile, I actually got to eat hot food without cutting it into tiny pieces first. I remember thinking, this might be what partnership looks like. As the months passed, Daniel began showing up more and more. He never tried to replace anyone. He just showed up. He picked Emily up from school when I had late meetings. He read bedtime stories with the silliest voices. He let her paint his face one Saturday and walked around our apartment with glitter on his cheeks like it was nothing. He asked questions about her likes, her fears, her bedtime routine, and he remembered everything. He called her kiddo and made her feel like the sun rose and set just for her. There was no DNA connecting them, but the love was undeniable. Daniel never asked to be called Dad. He earned it. Back then, I believed that with Daniel in our lives, Emily would never feel unloved or unwanted. I thought love was enough. I thought the family he came from would see what I saw, a man who chose us, wholly and without hesitation. But I was wrong. Love, as I learned, doesn't always come from the people who should know how to give it. And sometimes, it's not the strangers who hurt us the most. It's the ones who are supposed to be family. When Daniel suggested organizing a family dinner to formally introduce Emily to his parents, I did everything I could to make it perfect. Emily had picked out a soft pink dress, the one with little ruffles on the sleeves, and she looked like a delicate angel. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "They'll fall in love with her the moment they meet her." The doorbell rang, and in came Linda and Mark, all smiles and cheer. They handed Emily a teddy bear, large, fluffy, and clearly brand new. "What a cutie," Linda cooed as she leaned down to hug her. But something about her eyes didn't match her tone. There was a distance, like she was watching a stranger. Throughout dinner, they asked all the right questions, commenting on how bright Emily was, how well-mannered. But their compliments felt rehearsed. Linda would glance at Emily with a polite smile, but never really look at her. And then came the subtle jab that stuck with me. "She's lovely, but she doesn't quite resemble either of you, does she?" Linda said, reaching for her wine. Mark chuckled. "Must be from your side of the family." I caught Emily shrinking slightly in her seat, playing with the hem of her dress. She's always been sensitive to people's tone. Even when words are sweet, she can feel what's underneath them. I tried to lift the mood, cracking a few light jokes, steering the conversation to neutral ground. But inside, I felt the first twinges of something I didn't want to name yet. As we walked them to the door later that night, Linda turned to me with a half smile and said, "Best of luck with motherhood. Must be a unique challenge when it's not your own, right?" I smiled back, tight and cold. Being a mother has nothing to do with biology. Love is a choice, and I chose Emily. We closed the door, and Emily, sensing my tension, leaned against me. "Did I say something wrong?" she whispered. I knelt down beside her and said, "No, sweetheart. You were perfect." That night, I lay awake for hours. My thoughts kept circling back to Linda's voice. Too smooth, too curated. And Mark, with his agreeable little laugh. It wasn't what they said, it was how they said it, like they were politely entertaining a child who didn't really belong. I wanted to believe that maybe it was just nerves. Maybe they needed more time. But a voice in the back of my head whispered something colder, something I didn't want to admit yet. Maybe they didn't see Emily as family. Maybe they never would. But what they didn't realize was this. Emily didn't need their approval. She had me. And if they ever tried to make her feel less than, I'd remind them, no child is ever less just because she wasn't born from blood. She was born into love, into mine. They called Harper their real granddaughter, and they said it right in front of my daughter. Harper is 9 years old, just like Emily. Blonde curls, blue eyes, always smiling at the right moments, saying the right things. She's Daniel's niece, the daughter of his younger brother. And from the moment they met her, Mark and Linda, the grandparents, made it crystal clear. This was the child they adored. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were just more familiar with Harper. Maybe Emily, being quieter, took longer to warm up. But there's only so many maybes before it becomes a pattern. At Emily's 7th birthday party, she gave Harper a handmade book filled with drawings and stickers. She was so proud of it. Harper handed over a smile and a distracted thanks, while Linda and Mark unveiled their gift to Harper, a shiny new pink bike with a glitter seat and a basket with her name on it. Harper was lifted into their arms, kissed on both cheeks, and spun around. Emily stood a few feet away, clutching a half-eaten cupcake, watching. I felt a knot in my stomach, but still, I smiled. I told myself I was overthinking it. Then came Christmas. 2 gifts were placed under the tree. One was for Harper, a brand new iPad mini complete with a unicorn case. The other was for Emily, a small pack of off-brand crayons and a coloring book meant for preschoolers. When I looked at Linda, her face didn't flinch. "Emily loves arts and crafts," she said, with that rehearsed warmth that always fell short of genuine. "Harper's more into tech. You know how kids are these days." Emily didn't cry. She didn't say a word. She just picked up her gift, nodded, and said, "Thank you." Later that night, she whispered to me, "I guess I'm not really as smart as Harper. That's why she gets better stuff." I didn't have the heart to correct her right then. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pull Linda and Mark aside and ask them how they could be so blind, so cruel in their favoritism. But instead, I bit my tongue, afraid of starting another fight, of being labeled dramatic. Daniel noticed too. He tried talking to them. They brushed it off. "You're being sensitive," they told him. "We treat them both the same." They didn't. Harper was always seated next to Grandma at family dinners. Emily was politely pointed to the end of the table. If Harper made a joke, the whole room laughed. If Emily spoke, she was usually met with silence, or worse, a glance at the clock. I come from Queens. We're not subtle people. We speak our minds. But in this family, I had to learn restraint. Except now, looking back, I regret not saying something sooner. Because every small moment built up. Every skipped hug, every unequal gift, every shared photo that cropped Emily out, it all taught her one thing, that she was less, that she had to work harder to be noticed, that love had a hierarchy, and no child, especially not mine, should have to live like that. I hosted Christmas dinner at our place. Nothing too extravagant, just enough to make it special. I ordered a 2-tier cake and bought a bunch of baby's breath flowers because Emily loves soft green and white. Linda arrived carrying 2 gifts. One was for Harper, an enormous Lego castle set. The other was for Emily, a basic coloring book with a pack of 4 crayons. They took photos of both girls together, but later that night, the only pictures posted on Linda's Facebook were of Harper. I wanted to ask Emily, "Did you see that?" But I stayed silent. I've often wished my daughter wouldn't notice these things, that maybe she'd be too young to grasp what was happening. But children like Emily, they notice everything. They just don't always know how to name it. After dinner, she asked me softly, "Mom, how come Grandma Linda never asked me to help bake cookies like she does with Harper?" I wanted to say, "Because you're too precious to be used as kitchen help for someone who doesn't appreciate you." But instead I said, "Maybe she just forgot this time, sweetheart." That night, when Emily had gone to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen with a mug of untouched cocoa and scrolled through Linda's post again. 10 photos of Harper, not one of Emily, who'd spent the evening smiling and helping me with the napkins. It hurt, but it also clarified things. I started keeping mental notes. Not because I wanted to tally grievances like a scorekeeper, but because I needed to stop gaslighting myself. I needed to stop telling myself, it's just me being sensitive. It wasn't. It was real. Every overlooked hug, every smaller gift, every time Emily's voice was ignored at family dinners while Harper's stories got applause, these weren't isolated incidents. They were a pattern. A quiet, careful exclusion dressed in politeness. And worse, I could see it starting to affect Emily. She would pause before speaking up, her eyes flickering to Linda like she was gauging permission. She started drawing less and watching more. Her bright little spark dimmed just a bit each time we saw them. New Yorkers, we pride ourselves on resilience, on spotting when someone's not being straight with us. But when it's family, when it's the people who are supposed to love your child unconditionally, it's harder. You second guess. You excuse, but no more. I wasn't ready to confront Linda then, not at Christmas. But I started preparing, because I knew there would be a moment. A line crossed too far, and when that moment came, I would not sit quietly. I would remember every time my daughter felt small, and I would not let it happen again. Not in my house, not on my watch. The week after Christmas, everything started unraveling. I got a call from my regional VP. There had been a last-minute opportunity to present our media pitch to a national nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. It wasn't optional. It was a big deal, something that could lead to a major federal partnership. I had to go. At the same time, Daniel's firm had been dealing with an unhappy tech client in San Francisco, threatening to pull their account. As account lead, he was being flown out for in-person damage control. For the first time in years, we were both being called away at once. We tried every backup. Our sitter was home in Vermont for the holidays. My sister had the flu. My mom had just had surgery. None of our close friends were available to take a child for 3 days on such short notice. Then Daniel suggested it. What about my parents? They've been saying they want more time with Emily. Maybe this is the chance. I hesitated. The memories of Harper's Lego castle still fresh in my mind. But Daniel pressed gently. It's just 3 days. Maybe it'll be good for them. For her. A fresh start? I wanted to believe him. Emily had asked me a few days earlier if Grandma Linda liked her now, if she was being better. I couldn't bring myself to tell her that love should never be something you have to earn. We agreed. I packed Emily's things with care. Her favorite, books, her fuzzy bunny pajamas, allergy medication and emergency contacts, a list of things she liked for breakfast. That morning, Linda and Mark showed up with their overnight bags. Linda didn't even ask to see what I'd packed. She scrolled through her phone while I reviewed instructions. We've raised 2 kids, she said, barely glancing up. 1 little girl won't be a problem. I knelt by Emily at the front door. You don't need to worry about anything, okay? Just enjoy your time, be yourself, and don't try to make anyone happy. That's not your job. She nodded solemnly. I'll help Grandma a lot. I'll be really good. You already are good, I whispered. You just be Emily. That's all you ever need to be. She waved from the back seat as they drove off. I stood on the porch longer than I should have, that familiar ache in my chest. I told myself it would be fine, but I had no idea I had just handed my daughter over to the most dangerous place she could be, not because of monsters, but because of people who believed they loved her while quietly making her feel like she didn't belong. The first night away wasn't terrible. In fact, it started off relatively calm. Emily called me just after dinner, her little voice soft but composed. She said they'd had spaghetti and green beans. Mark had made a joke about how, even picky, girls eat green beans when they're cooked right, and everyone laughed, everyone except Emily. She said Linda made her clean up the plates and told her to rinse everything before stacking them in the dishwasher. It's fine, Mommy, Emily added quickly. Grandma says it's good to help around the house. She says Harper always helps when she visits. I could hear the attempt at positivity in her tone. But I also know my daughter's voice. She was trying to sound okay. For my sake. It's okay to just relax, sweetheart, I told her. You don't have to be helpful all the time. You're not there to impress anyone. She giggled a little. Okay, Mommy. I love you. I love you more, I whispered back. But something felt off. Not alarming, not yet. Just muted, like Emily was reading from a script. The second night, there was no call from her at all. Around 6:30 p.m., I texted Linda asking if Emily could FaceTime for a few minutes. No reply. I waited another half hour, then tried calling directly. It rang 5 times, then went to voicemail. An hour later, Mark picked up. Oh, hey, Vanessa. Yeah, sorry. Emily can't talk right now. She's in bed already. Long day at the park. Park? I blinked. Which park? Just the local one, nothing fancy, he said casually. She was pretty worn out. We'll have her call you tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. By midday the following day, I still hadn't heard from anyone. I called twice. Both went unanswered. I finally got a single text from Linda around 1 p.m. that said, "She's fine, busy. We'll call later." That was it. No hello, no emojis, no photo, no follow-up. Something inside me twisted. I tried to reassure myself. Maybe they were just out doing something. Maybe their phone was on silent. Maybe Emily really was just busy. But I kept hearing her voice in my head. I'll help Grandma a lot. I'll be really good. Why was she always trying so hard to be good? What exactly was being asked of her? I sat in my hotel room that night, the lights dimmed, staring at my phone. There were no new messages, no missed calls. My daughter hadn't spoken to me in over 24 hours, and my in-laws seemed indifferent at best. That ache in my chest had returned sharper now, and it was in that silence, in the space where my child's voice should have been, that the fear began to grow. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind, the quiet kind, the rational mother's dread. Because sometimes neglect doesn't come in screams or bruises. Sometimes it's the absence of warmth, the void where care should be. And I was starting to realize that's exactly where I'd left my daughter. I landed in New York early, 2 days ahead of schedule. The final round of meetings had been canceled when our proposal got approved faster than expected. My team was thrilled. They wanted to celebrate over drinks in Georgetown. But I couldn't. Shake the cold coil in my stomach. I'll catch a flight home tonight, I told them. Surprise my daughter. I didn't tell Linda or Mark. I wanted it to be a real surprise. I imagined Emily's smile when I walked through the door. I could practically hear her little feet running down the hallway. The house was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. Their car wasn't in the driveway. No sounds came from inside. I rang the bell twice, then used the spare key they kept hidden under a cracked garden gnome by the porch. The air inside smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something burnt. Emily? I called out. Nothing. I walked through the living room, tidy but oddly lifeless. A coffee cup sat on the edge of the counter. The TV was off. Harper's pink hoodie was draped over the back of the couch, but no sign of my daughter. I found her. In the kitchen. She was standing on a step stool, her small frame hunched over the sink. Both arms submerged in sudsy water, her sleeves soaked up to the elbows. A dish towel was draped around her neck like an apron. Her hair was slightly damp, her cheeks flushed. The tile floor around her was spattered with water. She didn't hear me come in. She was scrubbing a glass cup with slow, careful circles. I froze. Emily, I said. She flinched and turned. For a moment, she looked like she didn't recognize me. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then she whispered, "Mommy?" I rushed over. "What are you doing, baby? Where's Grandma? Where's Grandpa?" Her lip trembled. "They went to Disneyland with Harper, just for the day." My mind reeled. "They left you here?" Alone? She nodded. Grandma said I spilled juice this morning, so I had to clean up the whole kitchen. She said I needed to learn responsibility. I stared at her hands, red and wrinkled. Her wrists were raw. Her knees had marks like she'd been kneeling on the hard floor earlier. How long have you been alone? She looked at the clock. Since breakfast. It was past 4 p.m. I knelt down, gripping her shoulders gently. Sweetheart, you're never supposed to be left alone. That's not responsibility. That's cruelty. And it is not your fault. She looked down. She said Harper deserved special things because she's their real granddaughter. I swallowed. Back tears. You are real. You are mine. You are loved. And I am so, so sorry. Emily melted into my arms. In that moment, everything inside me hardened into something fierce. No more excuses. No more benefit of the doubt. Whatever came next, they would never hurt my daughter again. I wrapped Emily in a blanket and gave her a cup of warm milk while I checked the house. No notes, no messages, just a little girl who'd been left behind by people who claimed to love her. She sat quietly, staring into the steam rising from her cup. What else did Grandma say? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She said, if I wanted to be treated special, I had to stop being clumsy, she replied, and that maybe if I worked harder, I'd understand why people like Harper deserve more. I felt a chill deeper than any winter wind, not because of the words, but because of how matter-of-factly Emily had repeated them, as if they weren't shocking, as if they made a kind of sad sense to her now. That was the moment I realized the damage wasn't just physical or logistical, it was emotional erosion, slow, silent, insidious. I helped her upstairs and drew a warm bath. She didn't splash, didn't play with her toys. She just sat there, her small shoulders rounded as I gently washed the soap from her back. Afterward, while she changed into her pajamas, I went downstairs and called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Hey, I just got off my last meeting. Everything okay? No, I said. I'm home. There was a pause. Wait, what? I came back early. I'm at your parents' house. They left Emily alone, all day. They took Harper to Disneyland and left her here. To clean. Silence. Then a single sharp breath. What? She spilled juice this morning. Linda told her she had to clean the kitchen to learn responsibility. They were gone since breakfast, Daniel. It's almost 5. There was a rustle. On his end. Papers moving. Maybe a suitcase zipping shut. I'm flying back tonight, he said. I don't care if the client walks. I can't believe they made her scrub dishes alone, Daniel, I interrupted. She's 9. His voice was low and cold. They're done, that's it. We didn't say much after that. There wasn't anything left to analyze. The reality was clear. After hanging up, I made Emily a peanut butter sandwich, her favorite, and sat with her as she ate. She asked me softly if she was in trouble. No, baby, I said. You're not in trouble, but Grandma and Grandpa are. They broke our trust. She looked up at me, eyes searching. Are they going to be mad at me? No, I replied. They might try to blame you, but it won't work. Because I was here. I saw everything. After she finished, I let her pick a movie and cuddle up on the couch. Her favorite fuzzy blanket, her stuffed raccoon, Mr. Paws. Anything to rebuild. Even a sliver of normal. She fell asleep before the opening credits finished, and I just sat there, watching her breathe. The anger simmered beneath my ribs, but I didn't let it boil over. Not yet. Because rage without action is just noise, and I wasn't going to raise my voice. I was going to raise hell in exactly the right way. Tomorrow, her grandparents would come home to a house they no longer belonged in, and they would learn what real consequences looked like. The kind that don't scream, but cut deep. The kind that protect little girls like Emily from ever feeling like they're second best again. I didn't call them. I didn't text warn, or even leave a note. I waited. I let Emily rest, made her favorite grilled cheese with tomato soup, ran a warm bath, and laid out her bunny pajamas. She never asked once where they were. She never asked when they were coming back, and that told me more than anything else. By 5:40, I saw the car lights sweep across the living room wall, the crunch of gravel, the slam of car doors, laughter, bags rustling, the back-and-forth bicker of two grandparents entertaining a child they'd just spent the day spoiling. I opened the front door and waited. Linda stepped in first, carrying a Disneyland bag and still wearing mouse ears. She froze when she saw me. Mark came in behind her, holding Harper in his arms. "Vanessa?" Linda blinked. "What are you doing here? I thought you were—" "I came back early," I said evenly. "Where's Emily?" Linda tilted her head. "Isn't she—" "She was alone," I said. "Alone in your house. All day. Scrubbing dishes. Crying." Mark's smile faded. Harper squirmed down from his arms, suddenly very quiet. "What?" he asked, his voice dropping. "She said she had a little accident with juice," I continued. "And instead of comforting her, you told her she had to clean the entire kitchen. You left her alone for over 8 hours." Linda scoffed. "Oh, come on, it wasn't 8 hours." "She had nothing to eat but dry cereal," I said. "She sat in wet clothes. She didn't know if you were ever coming back." "That's an exaggeration?" she replied sharply. "We told her we'd be back by dinner, and she's 9, not a baby." "She's 9, I repeated, "and you left her unattended for the entire day. That's not just negligence. That's abandonment." Mark spoke up. "Now hold on. We didn't mean to cause any harm. She spilled juice, got upset. Linda just wanted her to learn a little discipline." I stared at them both. Discipline is not making a child feel like a burden. It's not isolating her while you take the real grandchild to Disneyland. Linda's eyes narrowed. "I never said that." "She did," I said, nodding toward the stairs where Emily had been resting. "She told me you said Harper deserved special things because she's a real granddaughter. She told me you grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks." Linda turned red. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. She's a sensitive child. Always has been. She probably misunderstood. She didn't misunderstand," I cut in. "You've been diminishing her since the day you met her, with comments, comparisons, cold shoulders, and unequal gifts. You think because she's not related by blood, she doesn't count. But let me be very clear. Emily is our daughter. She is just as much a Blake as Harper." Mark looked uncomfortable now, eyes on the floor. I took a breath. "You will pack your things tonight. You will leave this house, and moving forward, there will be no unsupervised visits with Emily." Linda opened her mouth to argue, but I raised a hand. "No more excuses. No more chances. You had an opportunity to be her family. You chose favoritism and neglect. We're done pretending this is fine." For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Harper, quiet until now, tugged on Mark's sleeve. "Where's Emily? Can I say hi?" I looked at her, then back at them. "Not tonight. She's been through enough. And frankly, she's scared of you." I closed the front door behind me, and for the first time in days, the silence in the house felt like safety. The door slammed open with a gust of laughter. Linda walked in first, clutching a souvenir bag with a Disneyland logo printed across the front. Mark followed close behind, holding Harper on his hip. She looked sleepy and sunburned, a mouse ear, headband slightly askew on her tangled curls. None of them seemed to notice me at first. I stood still in the living room, arms crossed, the kitchen light casting a sharp glow behind me. When I cleared my throat, Linda jumped. "Vanessa! Oh my... What are you doing here?" Mark blinked. "Where's Emily?" I kept my voice steady. "She's upstairs. She's resting. She's tired after spending the entire day scrubbing your kitchen floor. Linda raised an eyebrow, scoffing. She spilled juice this morning. I told her it was time she learned some responsibility. We were only gone a few hours. A few hours? I repeated slowly. You left a 9-year-old alone for more than 6 hours. Mark set Harper down. Come on, Vanessa. She's not a toddler. She's perfectly capable. She probably enjoyed having the house to herself. They cried when I walked in. Her hands were raw from scrubbing dishes. Her knees were marked up from kneeling. And she thought she was being punished for not being your real granddaughter. The air changed then. The flippant amusement faded from Mark's face, but Linda doubled down. Oh, stop being dramatic. Emily is sensitive. She exaggerates. You always coddle her. I took a step forward, my hands trembling, but I held them tight at my sides. She didn't exaggerate when she told me you said Harper deserved special treats because she was your real blood. Or when she said you told her to be grateful she wasn't sent to an orphanage. Linda waved a hand. That's not how I meant it. We were making a point. Kids today don't understand discipline. No, I said, voice rising. What you did wasn't discipline. It was emotional abuse. It was neglect. And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to let you near her again unsupervised, you are gravely mistaken. Mark looked at me, pale now. Let's just calm down. I am calm, I replied, barely able to keep my voice from cracking. But I'm also done pretending. Linda crossed her arms. You're blowing this way out of proportion. We're family. Families argue. No, I said. Families protect each other. They don't make a child feel like an outsider. They don't measure love by DNA. Harper, still holding her bag of toys, looked up. Where's Emily? Can I show her my mini necklace? Even in the middle of the confrontation, that broke my heart a little. Emily's resting, I said softly. She had a very hard day. Linda's tone sharpened. So what? You're banning us now. That's your solution? You'll leave tonight, I told them. You can go to a hotel or drive home, but you will not sleep under the same roof as my daughter again. Not until you understand what you've done. Mark opened his mouth to protest, but Harper tugged on his sleeve. Why is everyone mad? Because even she could sense it. This fracture. This moment of truth we could never undo. I walked to the stairs without waiting for another word. I didn't slam the door, didn't scream, didn't beg. Because I wasn't trying to win a fight. I was protecting my daughter. And from that night forward, everything changed. I had never prepared for a confrontation like this before. Not with people I was supposed to call family, not with people who smiled at our wedding, toasted at Emily's birthday, and yet had looked her in the eye and told her, without saying, the exact words, that she didn't belong. By 5:30 p.m., I had scrubbed the tears off Emily's cheeks, wrapped her in fresh clothes, and made her a grilled cheese sandwich just the way she liked. Crusts off, extra cheddar. She didn't eat much. She just held the sandwich in her hands like it grounded her to something real. At 5:47, their car pulled into the driveway. Laughter. They came in carrying shopping bags, bright ones, the kind you only get from Disneyland. Linda's face was glowing with excitement. Harper got to hug the princesses, she said, walking through the front door without noticing me at first. Then she froze. Mark stepped in behind her, holding Harper, who was fast asleep on his shoulder. The room went still. I wasn't expecting you, Linda said. Her voice flatlined. All sugar evaporated. No, I replied. I wanted to surprise Emily. Imagine mine. They shifted uncomfortably. Linda moved to set the bags down, but I didn't. Move aside. Where is she? Mark asked, his eyes darting upstairs. She's resting, after being alone for 9 hours. Linda's brows furrowed. Oh, come on. She wasn't alone the whole time. We just went out for a bit. Harper was so excited for the trip. You left my daughter alone, I said flatly. You told her. She wasn't real family. You made her wash the entire kitchen for spilling juice. She's 9. Mark stepped forward. Vanessa, let's all calm down. No, I said. I am calm. This is what calm looks like when someone's been betrayed. Linda scoffed. We didn't betray anyone. You're making a mountain out of a moment. Discipline is not abuse. Abuse is exactly what this is, I said. Emotional, neglectful. You didn't just leave her. You made her feel like she had to earn your love. She spilled the juice, Linda replied. Her tone suddenly clipped. Then she stomped off with attitude. Actions have consequences. She was scared, I said, my voice rising. She thought if she didn't get the floor spotless, she'd lose dessert. She thought she was clumsy, unlovable, and a burden. Harper stirred slightly in Mark's arms. Mark's voice was quiet. Maybe we should talk when the girls aren't around. No, I said again. This is the last time you're in my house without boundaries. Linda crossed her arms. Excuse me? You're packing up and leaving. Tonight. You don't have the right. I have every right. I am her mother. You've spent years making her feel second best, but today you made her feel invisible. Harper opened her eyes and looked around. Where's Emily? She's okay, honey, I said gently. She's just resting. Linda looked stunned. You're breaking up the family over this? No, I replied. You did that. When you decided one granddaughter deserved Disneyland and the other deserved punishment. Mark shifted his weight. For the first time, he looked ashamed. We'll get our things. Good, I said. And from now on, there will be no unsupervised visits. You'll see her when and if she's ready. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just stood there holding the line because someone had to. For Emily. For every time she'd smiled through a slight. For every question she'd asked that I couldn't answer. Because love, real love, doesn't make a child beg to be seen. When Daniel got back from San Francisco and heard everything, he was furious in that quiet, controlled way I'd only seen once before, when a contractor tried to charge my elderly neighbor double for a roof repair. But this wasn't a neighbor. This was his own parents, and this time, it was our daughter. We sat on the couch with Emily between us, her hands clutching Mr. Paws, her stuffed raccoon. She looked up at us, unsure of what she'd done, like she was waiting for the punishment. No one told her she didn't deserve. Sweetheart, Daniel said gently, you didn't do anything wrong. What Grandma and Grandpa did, it wasn't okay. Are they mad at me? She whispered. I shook my head. No, baby, but we are very upset with them. She nodded slowly, her eyes not quite meeting ours. The next morning, over waffles and orange slices, Daniel and I had the conversation no parent wants to have. How do we undo this damage? How do we help her unlearn the idea that love is conditional? Therapy. We needed therapy. We didn't want just anyone. We asked friends. We read reviews. We called offices. We looked for someone who understood adoption, attachment, identity, and eventually, we found Dr. Lorraine Carter. Her office was on the Upper West Side, nestled between a dog bakery and a used bookshop. She wore cardigans with elbow patches and always had a small bowl of lemon drops on her desk. Emily liked that. The first few sessions were hard. Emily wouldn't talk much. She colored. She looked at the floor. She clung to Mr. Paws. But Dr. Carter was patient. She let the silence stretch. She let Emily lead. And slowly, my daughter began to speak. Grandma said, I'm lucky you took me, she said one day, not even looking up. Daniel flinched. Do you think you are? Dr. Carter asked gently. Emily shrugged. I guess. She said other people wouldn't want me. And there it was, the sentence I'd feared the most, the one that had been blooming in the background like mold on a forgotten piece of bread. Quiet. Hidden, but growing. I wanted to interrupt. I wanted to scream. but Dr. Carter held up a hand. She looked at Emily and said, "Sweetheart, do you know what I think? I think your mom and dad are the lucky ones." Emily blinked. "Because they got you. It didn't erase the damage, but it planted a seed. Each week we talked more. About family, about names, about love, about blood, and how it doesn't mean more than kindness. We told Emily stories about how we chose her, how her birth doesn't define her worth, how what makes a family isn't DNA, it's who shows up, who stays, who says, 'I love you' every single day, even when it's hard. At home, we made changes. More time just for her. New traditions, Saturday pancake mornings, just us three, notes in her lunchbox. Little reminders that she was seen, heard, valued. Dr. Carter told us something I'll never forget. When a child is hurt by someone they're supposed to trust, it isn't just sadness, it's confusion. You're not just helping her feel better. You're helping her make sense of the world again." Emily started smiling more, drawing again, asking to read books out loud. Her voice got louder, her steps bolder. Healing, I learned, doesn't happen in a straight line. It's messy, it's circular. Some nights she still asked if Grandma was mad at her. Some mornings she hesitated before calling herself our daughter. But we reminded her, again and again, you are ours, and we are yours, and nothing can change that. The phone calls started that Sunday morning. First it was Daniel's aunt from Westchester, then his cousin from Albany. By noon I had 5 missed calls and 3 vaguely passive-aggressive texts. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." One read, "Linda's heart is in the right place," said another, and then, "Vanessa, you know how hard it is to discipline kids these days without someone calling it abuse." The story had already spread, and it had been twisted beyond recognition. According to Linda and Mark, Emily had thrown a tantrum, refused to eat, made a mess, and needed to cool off. They had taken Harper to Disneyland as a reward for good behavior. Emily had opted to stay home. Daniel and I sat together on the living room floor. Emily curled on the couch nearby, drawing quietly, her favorite raccoon plush beside her. My hands were trembling from rage and exhaustion, but I kept my voice calm as I spoke with Daniel's brother, Michael. He'd called late that afternoon. "Hey," he said, his voice low. "I know things are tense, but I wanted to ask. What really happened?" I told him everything, not just the dishes and the solitude, but the full picture, the pattern, the comments, the cold glances, the one-sided love. There was a long silence. On the other end of the line, then Michael said, "Jesus, Lily said something last night about how she got to ride the roller coaster, but Emily had to be punished because she spilled juice. I didn't know what she meant. I thought she was confused." "She's not," I replied. "Emily told me the same thing." "I believe you," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry. I knew Mom and Dad were intense, but this is different." That call mattered more than he probably realized, because when the rest of the extended family kept defending Linda and Mark, Michael didn't. He stood with us. He started pushing back. The next day, he posted a short, measured message to the family group chat. "I've spoken to Vanessa and Daniel. I believe them. Please stop minimizing what happened to Emily." Of course, the backlash came fast. An uncle accused me of manipulating the story. A great aunt said, "Well, she's not their blood, it's not the same." And that was the moment Daniel lost it. "She's my daughter," he texted back directly. "If anyone in this family thinks biology is the only thing that makes someone real, then don't bother calling us again." From there, the floodgates opened. Everyone had an opinion. Some quietly exited the chat. A few reached out to me privately. One of Daniel's cousins, divorced, childless, and blunt, sent a message that just said, "Good for you. Keep protecting her." I clung to those small notes of support, like life rafts. What struck me most was how many people weren't angry at what had happened, but at us for talking about it, for naming it, for breaking the illusion that everything in our family was fine. We had disrupted the peace, but the peace had never included Emily, and I wasn't going to teach my daughter that silence was the price of belonging. So I held the line. We didn't need the whole family to agree with us. We needed them to understand that this wasn't up for debate. Emily's safety, her dignity, her right to feel like she belonged, that wasn't negotiable. And if standing up for her meant standing alone, we were more than ready. I stood at the window, watching the sky shift from gold to slate. Emily was upstairs, curled beneath a fuzzy blanket with her raccoon plush, watching cartoons on low volume. She hadn't asked when her grandparents were coming back. She hadn't asked about Harper. That silence said more than words ever could. Daniel's flight had landed. He called from the taxi. 10 minutes, he said. His voice was low and strained. I haven't stopped thinking about it since your text. I had told him everything, not just about the dishes or being left alone. I told him about the juice, the scrubbing, the words Linda used, real granddaughter. I even told him about the bruises on Emily's knees, the ones she had tried to cover with leggings. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. But I could hear the fury boiling under every breath he took. When he walked through the front door, he didn't say, "Hello?" He didn't set down his suitcase. He came straight into the kitchen where I was waiting. They left her alone, he said, more to himself than to me. And they punished her. For nothing. For existing, I added quietly. He sat at the kitchen table, rubbing his forehead. I can't even wrap my head around it. I knew they favored Harper. I saw it. But this is different. It's not favoritism anymore, I said. It's abuse. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't defend them. He didn't try to minimize. He just nodded. They're coming back soon, I said. I told Emily to stay upstairs when they arrive. I don't want her to hear any of this. Good, he said, finally meeting my eyes. Because I'm not going to be calm. They can't stay here, Daniel. No, he agreed. Not another night. The sound of tires on gravel made us both look toward the window. The car door slammed. Then another. Voices outside. Laughter. I could feel the blood in my body begin to simmer. They walked in like nothing had happened. Linda carried shopping bags. Mickey Mouse, glitter, a balloon barely deflated. Mark followed behind, holding Harper's jacket. Look who's back, Linda called out cheerfully, kicking off her shoes. Daniel stepped forward. We need to talk. Linda looked surprised. Oh, Daniel, you're back early. We were going to tell you all about the trip. Where is she? Mark asked. Is Emily asleep? She's upstairs, I answered, my tone ice. Resting, Daniel added, because she's been home alone for hours, cleaning, while you were off taking Harper to Disneyland. Linda blinked. Don't be so dramatic. You left a 9-year-old alone, I said, all day. That's not dramatic. That's dangerous. That's neglect. Mark raised his hands. Let's not jump to conclusions. She spilled juice and Linda thought, Daniel cut in sharply, that it was okay to leave a child alone in an empty house as punishment. Do you have any idea how reckless that is? She's not a baby anymore, Linda said defensively. She should have been more careful. We told her we'd be back for dinner. You didn't leave a note. You didn't answer calls. You didn't care, I said. You abandoned her because you don't see her as your granddaughter. Silence. You've made it clear, I continued. With every gift, every photo, every comment, you treat Harper like family. You treat Emily like a guest in her own home. Linda's face twisted. Don't turn this into some moral crusade, Vanessa. Daniel stepped closer. No, she's right, and we're done pretending you didn't cross a line. Mark looked between us, his voice quieter. What are you saying? "You're leaving," Daniel said. "Tonight. And from now on, you don't see Emily without one of us present. No more unsupervised visits. Period." Linda's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," Daniel said. I didn't say another word. I didn't have to. We weren't asking. We were telling. The auditorium buzzed with that familiar pre-show energy, folding chairs scraping against linoleum, grandparents clutching bouquets from corner florists, phones being fumbled into camera mode. The walls of PS 124 in Queens were plastered with glittery posters that read "Winter Music Celebration" in shaky third-grade handwriting. Somewhere behind the curtain, Emily waited in her white sweater and red plaid skirt, clutching a tambourine. We had spent all week rehearsing the night's routine, how we'd walk her in through the back, where we'd sit, second row from the end, left side, and what to do if she felt nervous. She had asked me the same question, at least a dozen times. "Will Grandma and Grandpa be there?" And each time I told her the truth. "Yes, but you won't be alone. We'll be with you the entire time." Daniel sat beside me, his hand resting lightly on mine. On his other side was Michael, his younger brother and Harper's dad. Michael had made a point of showing up early, walking in with us, positioning himself as a barrier between us and his parents. It meant something, more than I could say out loud. I saw them before Emily did. Linda and Mark entered the auditorium just as the lights were dimming. They moved stiffly, as if their presence here were an obligation. Linda's face was drawn tight, her mouth pursed, in a line that could have cut glass. Mark looked more subdued, but he avoided our eyes entirely. They didn't approach us, didn't wave, didn't smile. They took their seats at the far side of the room, 2 rows back from ours. Emily came out with her class, scanning the audience with wide, nervous eyes. When she spotted us, me, Daniel, Uncle Michael, her face relaxed into a tiny smile. Her eyes never strayed to the other side of the room. When the concert ended, the hall burst into applause. Parents rushed forward with flowers and photos, praise and hugs. We waited near the exit where her teacher would release her. When she emerged, Emily ran straight into Daniel's arms. "You were amazing," he said, lifting her off the ground. "I'm so proud of you." I kissed her forehead. "You did it, sweet pea." Before we could turn to leave, Mark stepped forward. "You sang beautifully, Emily," he said gently. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Thank you." Linda appeared beside him, her expression unreadable. "Yes. Well done." That's all she said. No warmth, no softness, just 2 words. Daniel cleared his throat. "We're going to head out." Mark hesitated. Could we say goodbye properly?" Emily looked up at me, uncertainty flickering across her face. I crouched down to her level. "It's your choice, baby. If you want to, we can. If not, that's okay too." She thought about it, then shook her head gently. "Not tonight." Mark looked disappointed but nodded. Linda bristled. "I see," she said coolly. "You've turned her against us." "No," I replied, keeping my voice even. "You did that all on your own." We turned and walked away. Emily's hand found mine, and she squeezed it tight. "Mommy," she whispered, "I'm glad you were there." "Always," I told her, "every single time." And as we stepped out into the crisp night air, the lights of the school twinkling behind us, I realized something. The concert hadn't just been a performance for Emily. It had been proof. Proof that she was seen, loved, protected, and no one, not even family, could take that away from her again. The first time we saw them again was at Lily's school concert, which happened to fall on the same evening as Emily's. Both girls were performing, and the auditorium was packed with parents, grandparents, and buzzing kids in sparkly costumes. I hadn't seen Linda or Mark since the confrontation. We hadn't exchanged a single word since I told them to leave our house and not come back without an invitation. We made sure Emily knew we'd be there the whole time. I helped her into her dress, the light blue one with silver stars she loved. "You'll be amazing," I told her. "And no matter who's in the crowd, you keep your eyes on us. We'll be right there." Daniel and I arrived early, sitting front and center. Mark and Linda were already there, sitting on the opposite side of the auditorium with Michael and his wife. Harper was standing with the other kids, scanning the rows with a big grin. Emily stood just behind her, clutching her hands, looking small even in the glow of the stage lights. After the performance, we waited outside the classroom for Emily. Harper came out first, running straight to Linda, who wrapped her in a hug and handed her a bouquet of pink carnations. A bouquet. I blinked. Emily stepped out just behind her, looking around, uncertain. When her eyes found me, I smiled and opened my arms. She rushed over. "Did I do okay?" she asked. "You were wonderful," I said. "You always are." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Linda walking toward us. Her face was tight, lips pursed, arms crossed under the bouquet she now held at her side. "Well," she said, her voice flat, "it seems you've succeeded in making her hate us." I didn't flinch. "Emily doesn't hate anyone. She just remembers how you made her feel. That's not something a child forgets easily." Mark spoke then, his voice softer. "She sang beautifully." Emily looked up, unsure how to respond. I thanked him and kept my hand gently on her shoulder. "She's being kept from us," Linda snapped. "You're breaking up this family over one mistake." "It wasn't one mistake," I said calmly. "It was a pattern, and you've never once acknowledged it." "This is ridiculous," she said, gesturing. "I can't even speak to my granddaughter without being watched." "That's right," I said. "You don't get unsupervised access to Emily anymore. That's the boundary." Mark looked at me then, really looked. For the first time, I saw something like regret behind his eyes. Linda didn't respond. She turned back toward Harper, forcing a smile. Later that night, Emily asked me, "Mom, are they still mad at me?" Daniel, driving, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "No, sweetheart, they're mad at the situation, but none of this is your fault." Emily nodded slowly, but didn't speak again for a while. Over the next few weeks, we cautiously allowed limited supervised visits. An hour at the park, dinner at a neutral restaurant. Linda remained brittle, uncomfortable with the new dynamic. She often whispered comparisons between Harper and Emily that she thought we couldn't hear. But Mark, he started trying. He brought small, thoughtful gifts. He asked Emily questions about school, her interests. He stopped calling her a handful in that dismissive way. The change was slow, uneven, but it was something. What surprised me most was the bond that quietly rebuilt between Emily and Harper. Without the favoritism casting a shadow over every interaction, they laughed more, played games. They were just two little girls again. One afternoon, Emily said, "I wish I could sleep over at Harper's again." I smiled, but shook my head. "Not yet, honey. But maybe one day, when it feels right and safe." She nodded. "Because of what Grandma did?" I paused. "Yes, because we have to protect your heart. That's our job." She looked at me, thoughtful. Then she said, "But it's not because I'm not a real Blake, right?" I leaned in and kissed her forehead. "You are more than real. You are exactly who you're meant to be, and no one can take that from you." It happened during one of our supervised Sunday lunches, neutral territory, a little Italian place we knew downtown. We'd been meeting there once a month, mostly for Emily's sake. She and Harper still had a bond, and we wanted to give them a chance to rebuild it without subjecting Emily to unsupervised time with Linda and Mark. The lunch started like all the others, stiff small talk, polite nods, tension so thick it could be sliced with a butter knife. Linda mostly pushed food around her plate. Mark tried to ask Emily a few questions, school, books, if she was still drawing, but there was a barrier, invisible and heavy. Emily answered, but cautiously, never quite meeting their eyes. Daniel had stepped out to take a work call. Emily excused herself to the restroom, and then with no warning, Linda spoke. I owe her an apology. I blinked. I wasn't even sure she was speaking to me until she looked up, eyes glossy but steady. What we did, what I said, it was wrong. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to interrupt whatever this was. Confession? Guilt? Something real? I wasn't sure yet. I told myself I didn't mean it that way, she continued. That I was just being honest, that children need to understand where they come from. But the truth is, I made her feel unwanted, like she wasn't family. She paused as if choking on her own words. That's not the kind of woman I ever wanted to be. Then, to my surprise, Mark joined in. We thought we were teaching her discipline, that some structure would be good for her. But looking back, now, it wasn't about helping. It was about control, about favoring the familiar, the bloodline. He glanced down at his untouched pasta. And that wasn't right. Emily returned just then, and Linda straightened. Her face was a mix of hope and fear. An older woman carrying the weight of her own stubbornness. Emily, she said, her voice shaky. I want to tell you something. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. You are. You always were. Emily stood there, one hand still on the back of her chair. I watched her process the moment, saw her eyes dart from Linda to me and back again. It's okay, she said automatically. No, Mark interjected softly. It's not. And you don't have to say that. Not today. Not ever. What happened wasn't your fault. It was ours. There was silence, a long one. Then Emily walked back to her chair and sat down slowly. Can I ask you something? She said, looking at Linda. Of course. Why did you treat me different from Harper? Linda opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked away, then back. I think I was scared, she said. Scared that loving you would mean letting go of something I thought mattered more. But I was wrong. Love isn't about blood. It's about what you give, how you show up, how you make someone feel. Emily didn't respond right away, but she reached for her water glass, took a sip, then looked at Linda again. Okay, she said. Not a forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of one. Afterward, as we walked back to the car, Emily took my hand. Mom? Yeah, sweetheart? Do. You think Grandma really means it? I looked down at her. I don't know yet, but it's a start. She nodded, thoughtful. I think I'd like to give her another chance. Just one. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel afraid of that idea. 6 months passed. If you had asked me that day, standing in Linda and Mark's kitchen with my arms around a trembling Emily, whether healing was possible, I don't think I would have believed it. But time, therapy, and relentless love have a way of rebuilding what others tried to tear down. It wasn't quick or easy. There were nightmares, hesitations, sudden tears during breakfast for reasons Emily couldn't explain. But we sat with her through every wave. Daniel and I learned how to listen without correcting, how to validate without overpromising. And Emily, little by little, found her voice again. We created new family rituals, things that were just ours. Every Friday became French Toast Fridays, where Emily picked the toppings. Saturday mornings were for messy craft projects and music. We redefined what a safe home felt like for her, not by saying so, but by showing it over and over again. For Linda and Mark, the boundaries we set stayed firm. Supervised visits only, short durations, no overnight stays, and not until Emily said she was ready. They didn't like it, especially Linda. There were tears, accusations. At one point she called us cruel, said we were using our daughter to punish her. But then something shifted. Linda started seeing a therapist, one recommended by Dr. Carter. the same one who'd been helping our family. She began showing up differently. She brought books for Emily that were about adopted families, about inclusion. She started writing apology notes, not big, performative gestures, but quiet ones. "I'm learning. I want to do better." Robert followed suit. He never said much, but one afternoon he handed Emily a small handmade birdhouse. "I thought maybe we could paint it together sometime, if you want." It was clumsy, but genuine, and then came her 10th birthday. Emily wanted a party, not a big one, but with people who made her feel safe. We rented a room at her favorite art studio in Brooklyn, filled it with paints, canvases, and music. Her classmates came. So did Michael and Harper. Even Linda and Robert, after Emily gave us the okay. It was the first time since everything happened that we were all in the same space. Linda brought a small box wrapped in pale blue paper. Inside was a custom-made charm bracelet. One charm was a paint palette. Another was a tiny raccoon. The third was engraved with 3 words, "You belong here." Emily stared at it for a long moment. Then she looked up and whispered, "Thank you." Later, I found her sitting with Harper, painting side by side like nothing had ever come between them. And maybe for them, it hadn't. Children are better at forgiveness than we are. Daniel took photos. So many photos. And when Emily leaned against me as the cake came out, cheeks flushed from laughter, I knew this was more than just a party. It was reclamation. We hadn't just shielded her from harm, we'd built something better. A foundation that wouldn't fracture under favoritism, silence, or outdated ideas of bloodlines. That night, after the guests had gone and Emily had fallen asleep with paint on her fingers, I scrolled through the pictures on Daniel's phone. One stood out, Emily, eyes closed, mid-laugh, arms thrown wide, free. And in that quiet moment, I knew we had done what mattered most. We had made her feel wanted, not because she'd earned it, but because she always was.